everyone, and welcome to Senior Blue Book's Senior Care, Propelling Senior Healthcare Sales Calls. I can't even get it out now after all of our flummoxes with the technology today. But I guess that's what happens when you set up a Zoom meeting maybe a month in advance. It doesn't work sometimes. So I apologize for that, guys, that it was a late getting in. Oh, we've got someone coming in right now. My name is Cynthia.Gartman. I'm with Seniors Blue Book, and joining me today is Veronica Fogelman and Jody Ashley with the Ledgerock Consultancy. Ronnie is their president and CEO, and Jody is the director of client services, I think. Hey, I gotta get that. Anyway, we're so excited that you're here with us, and this is going to be a really, really enjoyable hour and a half here. And we do have a couple of breakout sessions today. And so when that happens, we'll be putting you into breakout rooms, and you'll have the opportunity to do some discussion just as if we were in that room. Can you believe it, Cindy Hartman? That was last November that we were in that room at Country Meadows. It does not seem possible. That was 11 months ago. Yeah. Seems like a world away. So anyway, so happy to have you all, and I am going to, every one of you should have received the workbook by email. So you have that. You can look at it on your computer, print it out, whatever you prefer. And Ronnie is going to take it over. I'm just going to be here to assist in the process and work those breakout rooms and the slides and things like that. And speaking of that, Ronnie, let me get your slides up on the screen.
Well, hopefully everyone's doing well today. We're like,
I hope so.
I'm hoping you're all looking forward to having a little chat about sales and kind of what it means to me. I'll give you, while we're trying to get this up and running, my background, for those of you who don't know me or haven't met with me, is I've been in sales all my life. I was in real estate in Southern California. Moved from there to the American Lung Association, where I was in charge of fundraising for a while. And then I began to work for Governor Leader in the northern part of Pennsylvania, and it was purchased by ManorCare. And then I moved to ManorCare for the next 25 years. I ended my career in the corporate office in Toledo as the Vice President of Sales and Marketing. So during that time, my role was very different than what I was used to during my life, which is actually hands-on sales, which I truly loved. But I did that for 10 years, almost 11. And then I decided 25 years was enough. It was time to retire and go start my own company. And my goal was always to try to help the companies that didn't have a whole 15th floor full of sales and marketing gurus and all that. They don't have all that support system. So because we're Ledgerock's a relatively small company, we're able to bring some of these services to smaller companies at a more reasonable price so they can stay in their budget. And I can bring 30 years of experience. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. We're going to begin to talk about, there's like 5 segments that we're going to be talking about that take us into the different realms of sales. We only have 90 minutes. Usually when I do just a basic sales training, it can be 3 days, depending on how deep the management of that company wants to go. So we're really going to do a bird's eye view today. We're going to be talking about sales at a very high level. We're not going to have the time to get into all the details. So here's today's agenda, folks, that we're going to go through. I want to be able to talk about sales as a profession first and not as a job. We're going to talk about kind of the philosophy behind understanding the focus that we need to have sometimes. Then we're going to talk about the whole decision about where you're going to go on these sales calls, who you're going to talk to, and why are you going there? What's your purpose? And then we're going to get into the call itself. And we're going to talk just a little bit briefly about what do you do after you say hello. Many times when I'm on sales call with people, we kind of tend to get stuck in what we call the nicety, the kind of discussion part where we're talking about their kids and their families and the latest cookie recipe. And then we have a hard time getting moving from that into the business at hand. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about questioning briefly. We're going to talk about different types of questionings and how you can use them to really uncover the needs that you have for your family members, most likely, or your physicians, or whoever your clientele is. And then we're going to close with really talking about my philosophy, which has always been, you don't need to close. If you've done everything else right, by the time you get to the close, it's a simple question. And we don't need 101 different closing techniques if we've done all of the legwork first. So that's kind of today's agenda. Hopefully that sounds good for everyone. You can go to the next slide. And the next slide just simply says that what we're going to be doing right now is talking about sales as a profession. It is not a 9-to-5 job. Probably if I've said that once, I've probably said it 1,000 times. You really need to be the first one in and the last one to leave, because that's what sales is. And in your building or your community, you're viewed by how important you take this position. So many times it requires a little bit more than 9 to 5. So go ahead, Cynthia. Sales is also not a 4-letter word. Sales, if you view it correctly and you don't think of it in a negative way, as if you're trying to force something on someone. And I'll give you an example of when I think that happens. I think many times our administrators will tell us to go over to the hospital and tell them about our new unit, or go over to the hospital and tell them about something. That's really the pushing of sales. Sales is not, that's not what sales is. Sales is about sitting in front of someone that genuinely wants to be in front of you and asking them the right questions so that they understand that you're there to help them. You're there to assist them, to solve a problem, to solve some type of an issue they're having, and you have the answers to those issues and challenges, and you're going to present them to them, those solutions to them. So sales is really more of that than it is pushing things on people. And the next slide. And of course, one of the things you want to remember in our industry, I'm thinking most of the people, and I don't know this for sure, but I think most of the people on this call are in healthcare. There may be some people are on some of the diverse industries just around healthcare, but most of us are in healthcare or have been most of our lives. And this is a really important slide. We must have a sales focused culture, but we also must understand that the sales focused culture lives within an operations driven culture. So let me explain to you what I mean by that. If you went to work for PepsiCo or General Motors or Nike, you would be working in a sales-focused culture. Everything is focused on sales. Every meeting starts out talking about sales and ends talking about sales. Every goal is about how many sneakers did we sell? How many cars did we sell? How's the new Pepsi product doing? How many did we sell? It's a sales-focused culture. There's an operations culture that lives within there. So once they know what the sales is, they can go into operations and make things happen. Ours is the flip of that. We live in an operations-driven culture, and it should be, because we care for the frailest among us. We have to make sure that they're well cared for. So we do live in an operations-driven culture. But within that culture, there must be a sales-focused culture. And your job, the salesperson's job, is to make sure that you keep that focus on sales. If you don't, it will become purely operations-driven. And so that's why you're such a valuable, critical, important part of the sales in healthcare. You're maybe the only one in the building that is that sales-focused person that brings that culture there. So it's really, really important that you keep the kind of diamond-focused light on the sales at every meeting, So I often will, when Jody and I and Morgan and I go to some of the buildings, the first thing I do is go to morning meeting. And I go there for a purpose. My purpose is to see what happens in morning meeting. Where's the focus? Is it sales focused? Is it operations focused? Where's the admissions people? Who's talking about move-ins? What's going on? And very often I'm very disappointed that sales is a sort of last thing we talk about, or a kind of, oh, I forgot. Yeah, what are we doing with move-ins? You guys have to keep the sales, the focus on the sales focused culture. And that's kind of we're going to work on. Next slide. So let's talk about what that means. Has anyone seen Simon Sinek? Gosh, you all have your, okay, I'm seeing heads nod up and down. Simon Sinek did a TED Talk a while ago. And I love this particular one because it talks to why we do what we do and how important it is for you as salespeople to impart to your clients and your customers the why behind what you sell. So do you want to go to the next slide, Cynthia?
I call it the golden circle. Why, how, what? This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? And why should anyone care? Well, as a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because they're easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done, that's how most sales is done, and that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do, we say how we're different or how we're better, and we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, something like that. Here's our new law firm. We have the best lawyers with the biggest clients. We have, we always perform for our clients, do business with us. Here's our new car. It gets great gas mileage. It has, leather seats. Buy our car. But it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right? You're ready to buy a computer from me. All I did was reverse the order of the information. What it proves to us is that people don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. This explains why every single person in this room is perfectly comfortable buying a computer from Apple. But we're also perfectly comfortable buying an MP3 player from Apple, or a phone from Apple, or a DVR from Apple. But as I said before, Apple's just a computer company. There's nothing that distinguishes them structurally from any of their competitors. Their competitors are all equally qualified to make all of these products. In fact, they tried. A few years ago, Gateway came out with flat-screen TVs. They're eminently qualified to make flat-screen TVs. They've been making flat-screen monitors for years. Nobody bought one. And Dell came out with MP3 players and PDAs. And they make great quality products, and they can make perfectly well-designed products, and nobody bought one. In fact, talking about it now, we can't even imagine buying an MP3 player from Dell. Why would you buy an MP3 player from a computer company? But we do it every day. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. When we communicate from the outside in, yes, people can understand vast amounts of complicated information like features and benefits and facts and figures. It just doesn't drive behavior. When we communicate from the inside out, we're talking directly to the part of the brain that controls behavior, and then we allow people to rationalize it with the tangible things we say and do. This is where gut decisions come from. You know, sometimes you can give somebody all the facts and your figures and they say, I know what all the facts and details say, but it just doesn't feel right. Why would we use that verb? It doesn't feel right. Because the part of the brain that controls decision-making doesn't control language. And the best we can muster up is, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. Or sometimes you say you're leading with your heart or you're leading with your soul. Well, I hate to break it to you, those aren't other body parts controlling your behavior. It's all happening here in your limbic brain, the part of the brain that controls decision-making and not language. But if you don't know why you do what you do, and people respond to why you do what you do, then how will you ever get people to vote for you or buy something from you, or more importantly, be loyal?
But I want you to think about how do you sell your building, your community? What is it you talk about? Do you talk about what you do? Do you talk about how nice it is and how wonderful you do it and how great everybody is and how fabulous the food is? Or do you really talk about why we do what we do? The why behind caring for the people that need us the most. That's what we do. And that's why we do it, because we care about them. So that's the Simon Sinek thing. Believe me, his is much better than mine. So let's do the next slide. Okay. So there's two things I wanted to talk about before we actually get into the call. And I focused on two particular roles of sales in healthcare. There's the internal role and the external role. There's also what we always call the innie-outie. I was that person as an admissions director where you did both. You did all the internal interviews and tours and all of that. And you also did the external piece. So you did the calls to the doctors and the calls to the clergy and the calls to the community people. So that's an innie-outie. Pretty much, I wanted to focus on the difference between the internal and the external. And if you happen to be an innie-outie, just go ahead and listen, kind of think about both of them. All right. So internal folks, if you are the admissions director, the move-in coordinator, the marketing director that has the responsibility of the internal sale, the first thing I would like you to think about is demanding your place at the table. If you're not at the table when decisions are being made about the product you sell, you will have no voice. That means you actually have to ask to be, or, I mean, my preference is demand, but you may not be comfortable with that. So what you want to do is, so just make sure that your voice is being heard. If there's a meeting about the budget and the budget is about how many Medicare patients you need to have, you should be at the table. If there's a discussion about amenities or capital budget, what you're going to be spending on making your unit look gorgeous and be everything that it needs to be competitive, you need to be at the table. So you need to be strong enough to ask for that. You need to be an expert. I want you to really think about this when you are in your building. If I ask you a couple questions, rhetorical for today, could you answer them? Could you tell me how the kitchen handles the delivery of the food to ensure that the milk is cold and the dinner is hot? Can you explain that to me as a customer? Can you tell me what the laundry schedule is? Can you tell me exactly what time, what days, what do they pick up, what don't they do? When does that happen? Can you talk to me about your therapy department? Can you explain in your therapy department every piece of equipment, every piece of equipment, and what does it do? Have you actually used it? I used to make the admissions people go in and spend a day in the therapy department and actually have them use the E-stim on you. Get on some of those machines so that when you're explaining it to a family or to a physician, you know what you're talking about. You want to be an expert. Arrive early, leave late. You should be the first one that arrives in the morning and the last one to leave. That's what salespeople are. They arrive early and they leave late. Your best friend, if you are in a skilled or personal care or even an assisted living that has a clinical director, whatever the title might be. I often laugh at that because there are as many titles for things as there are buildings or companies. Everybody calls everybody a different thing, but you know who I'm talking about. Whoever that clinician is, they need to be your best friend. And I mean that sincerely. You need to get with them, talk to them, meet with them, go out and have a drink with them, have breakfast with them. You want to be on the same side. It's really, really, really important. It will help both of you to have a smooth sailing in the sales department. Create a tour script. If you have a tour team, a team of people that are you when you're not there, if you're leaving the building or you're out on vacation or whatever, and you have people that tour the building, for heaven's sakes, give them some help. The greatest concern I still hear from tour people or team members or whatever you call them, backup, is that they don't know what to do. They don't know how to sell a 3-bedroom. They don't know how to sell the therapy department. They don't know a lot of things that you know. So make sure you work with them with the tour script on how you talk about all the different parts of your building. Create an admissions team manual. And that's, again, when you're not there, they can open up a manual and there it tells them all the discharge planners' names, what floors they work on. There's an admissions form or an inquiry form or whatever forms you use. And it's all written in and yellowed and exampled so they feel comfortable. They are you in your stead. So you want them to be as good as you. Everything that you do should be focused on your number one goal. You have one goal, and that's to generate revenue. I know you all think you have a lot of other things you have to do, but believe me, you have one goal. You are the only one in the building, most likely, that's entire goal is to generate revenue. So make sure everything you do is focused on that. I'll give you an example. When I was an admissions director, our director of nursing was told to come around to all the department heads and have them sign up to feed in the dining room. I understand the need to have a team of people help to feed in the dining room. I was an administrator. I know what that feels like. But you don't have the time. You simply do not have the time to do all these things I'm telling you if you're going to be spending an hour and a half in the dining room feeding. However, you are part of the team. So I would take the form and I would fill out Thursday. That would be my day. And I would hand it to the director of nursing and say, you do understand if I have an outside call or a tour or anything else that's going on, I won't be able to do it. And in the 2.5 years that I was an admissions director, I never fed in the dining room because I always had something else that was more important to do, something that was focused on generating revenue. So that's my soapbox on that one. Say thank you to everyone every day. This is the other thing that I think sometimes we forget, that when you walk out to the nurses station and you're handing them 5 new admissions or 3 move-ins on a Saturday or whatever happens in your building, you are really creating a lot of work for them. So say thank you every day to everyone that's helping you to generate revenue in your building. And finally, wake up every morning happy that you've chosen this as your career. You're helping people to make a really, really difficult decision. And a lot of times it's the only time they've had to face making that decision. And you're the one there that's going to help them. So you're in a very, very important position. All right, let's look at the external. Maybe it's the next slide, I think. Okay. So if you are an external person, this includes hospital liaisons, business development people, anyone in that type of a role. Or if half of your role is external and half of it's internal, please, please stay out of the building. I know no one ever likes to hear that. You're in the building for a couple reasons. You're in the building because it's easier. You're in the building because going out and doing sales calls is really difficult. You're in the building because no one does it like you do it. That was my mantra. I can't go out. I'm sorry. I'm the only one that can give a tour the way I do it. I do it best. You're not. I'll let you know that. There's lots of people that love your building and they can give a perfect tour. Or you're in the building because the administrator or executive director is asking you to be in the building. Then you need to sit down at that table and have that discussion with them. Be an expert in your market. If you don't know every competitor and every product they have and what their census is and how good is their admissions person, then you don't understand your market. It's really important for you to know that. It's also important for you to position yourself in your building. You want to position yourself as the expert and your building as the best always when you're in sales calls. So that means you don't go over to the building and say, oh my gosh, everything's a mess in there. It's just, this COVID stuff has everything. Please, please don't do that. Position yourself in your building as the very best that you can be. Have a concrete sales plan. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Utilize your CRM. I don't know what you have. Some people have eSIN, some people have Salesforce. Whatever it is, use it. It's a great tool for you to use. And I do a whole training on just how to collect the data, how to manage it. Be actively involved in your marketing action plan. So yes, you do need to go into the building to be a part of the marketing plan. But again, it's being at the table. It's really being asked to be part of the team. And when you do sales calls, make sure they're a 4-point sales call. Face-to-face, potential customer, clear objective, and a next step. The traditional definition of a sales call. And over-communicate. Over-communicate back to the building, back to the market, back to the team. Communication is extremely important when you're an external salesperson. So that's kind of the external roles. Next slide. Oh, I want to give you a choice here. I want you to kind of think about this. So let's say you have 100 units. I don't know what they are. They might be beds, rooms, apartments. You might be selling something else, but you have 100 of them and you're only filling 80 of them. So you're at 80% occupancy, or you've only sold 80% of what you should. Every month you get 20 referrals. 20 pieces of business coming to the door, but you're only admitting 10. You're discharging or moving out 11 every month. So what is this a recipe for? Can anybody take their mute off and tell me what you think? What's going to happen here? Are there voices out there? This is where you get to talk, guys.
Disaster.
Decrease occupancy.
Yeah, your occupancy is going way down because you're discharging more people than you're bringing in. So don't go through them all yet, Cynthia. That's the first one. Okay, so you have 3 choices. One is you can increase the percent of people that you're moving in. So you can go to your DON or your clinician and say, okay, we got 20 referrals and we only admitted 10 of them. Can we do better? Let's look at those 10. Let's see. Can we admit 11 of them or 12 of them? Let's say she says, absolutely not. We could not admit those other 10 and you all know this, for a variety of reasons that can happen. Our next choice is, Cynthia, yeah. You can stop the discharges, stop the move outs, stop the deaths. How realistic do you think that one is? That's probably not going to happen. In a short-term rehab, everybody's going home now. And move-outs, they happen. And deaths, we have no control over. So you really only have one choice. And that is increase your referrals. That's all you can do. When you're sitting at less occupancy than you need to be at, the only answer to that is to increase business. Increase inquiries, increase tours, increase referrals. You do that through sales. That's the only option that you have. So you really, really want to be good at the ability to sell people on why they should choose your building. So next slide. So we're going to move to where are you going and why are you going there? That's our next step. So let's go to the next slide. Can we go to the next slide? Okay. I want you to think about these 4 or these 5 words: who, what, where, why, and when. Do you know why you're going where you're going on sales calls? Do you know what you're going to say when you get there? Who are they? What are they? When are they? Where am I in the sales cycle? So you want to make sure you know these things before you head out on a sales call. When I was an admissions director, I can remember driving to the bottom of the driveway on my day I decided was my outside day and not have a clue where I was going. Should I go right or should I go left? Well, let's go left today. I don't want you to do that. I want you to have a really clear idea of where you're going and why you're going there. Okay, next slide. When you're there, I want you to think a little bit about how you're positioned. Are you positioned as a professional when you're walking in and meeting with a doctor or a head of the clergy or a discharge planner or the vice president of clinical services at the hospital or the head of the therapy department? How do they see you? What are they looking at for you? So let's do the next slide and we'll see what that is, how people see you. You have pretty much 3 major choices. You can be seen as a product salesperson. You can be seen as a business expert, or you can be seen as a strategic resource. If you are a product salesperson, you're coming in to tell them you have open beds. That's it. I'm coming in to tell you I need your help. I got open beds. I've got 4 apartments left. Oh, my oncology unit isn't full. Or whatever your purpose is, they view you as a salesperson. Now, if you are viewed as a business expert, now you are the person that has more knowledge than they do. When they ask you, do you think Medicare will cover this patient? What do you think about United Healthcare? Will they be able to come in on this? What do you know about United Healthcare? What do you know about the 20-day? And you become a business expert. So when you walk in that hospital or you're talking to a physician or a therapy department and you know how all the therapy equipment works, or you know how things are covered or how doctors are paid, you become the business expert. If you go the step further and you become a strategic resource, that's when they call you for help. I know I've become a strategic resource when the CEO calls me and says, hey, Ronnie, I need some help finding a really great director of marketing. Can you help me? I've now become a strategic resource. That will not be the norm. That will happen occasionally, but that should always be your goal. So let's see what they look like. Go to the next slide. This is how you're viewed. You can click it through, so it's all there. Okay. If you are an order taker, that's the person who sits in the building and does nothing except admit people. They don't do any marketing or selling at all. Believe me, you are forgettable. It is a transactional operation. So it's like buying a toaster. If you're going in to buy a toaster, you aren't going to remember the salesperson. You buy a toaster. Nobody's going to come and explain everything to you about a toaster, and they're transactional operations. So you're all actually not much different than a computer. So the eSIN system has kind of replaced a lot of what we used to do as admissions because they can do it. They can put everything online. They don't really need the order taker as much. So let's say you're a little bit different than that. You're a supplier. You're a vendor. This is the one I get most upset about. When people tell me they can't go into the hospital because they're a vendor, or they need to have special permission because they're a vendor. You're not a vendor. Because if you're a vendor, you're a product salesperson. You're there to sell something. You're always viewed as an interruption. You're going to be able to give basic product information about how many beds you have. And you're going to be delegated always to the lowest level, which is usually your case manager. But remember, there's hundreds of people in that hospital for you to call on. Literally, hundreds of people for you to call on. To do that, you must be the healthcare expert. Now you're seen as a resource. Your sales call is a presentation. You're there to tell them something. You're there to educate them. You're there to explore some maybe new ideas. And you'll always be considered because they view you as an expert. And then finally, when you get to be a strategic resource, you become a trusted advisor. You're now a business meeting. These are the people that are invited to sit on the committees at the hospital or the boards in the cities. They're trusted advisors. You're bringing value, and you're always going to have access to the higher level. So these are the, I want you to just kind of think about this and where you are now. Are you a vendor? Are you a healthcare expert? Whichever one of those you are, you want to consistently try to move toward being a strategic resource, because that's going to get you the most connection with your clients and the upper level of all your clients. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Whoops, I'm going backwards. I'm trying to follow you on mine. I want to talk about a sales plan really quickly. We aren't going to go into this deeply. This is an entire training piece, but I want you to think about when I start out with a brand new salesperson, the first thing I do is ask them to create a list of 100 customers. So wherever you pull them from, they might be attorneys that have guests in your building. They might be doctors who visit your building or doctors who haven't visited your building. They might be CEOs or VPs or all types of people that you're going to put on this list. So you're going to put under the customer line their name. Remember, a customer is not an organization. So the hospital's not your customer. The person in the hospital is your customer. So you want to list out as many customers as you can. Then I always ask the people to prioritize them. I want you to go through your 100. And I want you to identify all of the A customers, the people you're getting business from, the people that you work with, that you know, that you can talk to. And you should have, out of the 100, about 20%. Then go to your C's. These are the people you don't know. You don't know much about them at all. You don't know if they're going to give you business. You're not sure. 20% are C's. The rest are B's. You know they have business. You just need to get it. So that's how you prioritize. And then you can say, during a week, I want to visit 1A. I want to visit 2 or 3 C's, and the rest of them are all my B's. And then I can go through and pick out geographically who's in the area I'm going to be spending time with to get appointments with. The purpose of your visits, the purpose of your calls is always the purpose of that call. So in that column, you were never allowed to have words like get referrals. That's the result. That's not why you're there. So what are you doing there? It might be, I want to see what their challenges are. It might want to see if there's some issues that are going on with long-term care. How are things going with something that changed at the hospital? Maybe I'm coming back to visit you because I have a solution to a problem we talked about. Maybe I'm following up because communication's been poor. Or we want to discuss some recent trends that are happening. But that's the purpose of the call, not get referrals, because that's the result of what you're doing. So try to sit down and put together a sales plan at least once a month and try and think about where you want to go and who you want to see and why you want to go on those calls. It's really important, because if you don't write it down, it doesn't happen. I'm just going to tell you, it doesn't happen. So I'm going to skip over the next slide, and I'm going to go to, it should say exercise 1 on your slide. There, right there. Okay, so this is exercise 1. This is the one that Jody should have sent out for all of you, the background on these 3 people. So you all have the background of these people, and we're going to throw you into some breakout rooms now. Cynthia's going to do that. And I want you to look at these 3 people, talk amongst yourselves, and decide who's the most important. Why am I going to make him most important, and who's the least important? And I want you to think about with those 3 questions: who has a very clear need, who's a potential to give me business, and who has the money and the resources to be able to move this sale forward. Then I want you to choose one person to write down the reasons why you chose 1, 2, and 3. Choose one person who's going to talk when you come back, and you'll have 10 minutes in the breakout room. Any questions before we throw you into the breakout room? All right. So breakout room number 1, who is the spokesperson?
So we are all in 3 different lines of work, our breakout group. So we weren't sure if we should have chose one that works the best for the group or for each of our individual needs. So we decided to work as a group together in which of these 3 scenarios, which client would serve us best overall as a group. And we chose Pastor Edwards. And we chose Pastor Edwards because he's new in his position. So we figured it would be good to educate him on our products and our services before any myths or wrong information comes his way. We also thought it would be good because his congregation is on the older side, so he would have a lot of influence with the older demographic. He also makes rounds at the hospitals, so he sees people not only that are maybe planners for the future, but also those that are in the hospital and have maybe a more immediate need. So we felt building a relationship with him and really educating him on our community and what we can provide as help to his congregation would give him some good talking points when he's counseling those in need.
Okay. Sounds good. Good job, Jenny.
Thank you.
Who is in breakout room 2?
I would say that we were very much in line with group 1. We did have a good conversation though.
Okay, good. All right, thanks, Morgan. And then breakout room 3, was that us, Amy, you and I and Mark?
Yep.
Okay, so Mark had to leave to go do a tour. So wonderful, right? Okay, so let me just tell you quickly what they came up with. They said Dr. O was the first choice for them because they thought his practice was suffering because of COVID, and so that meant he had the greater need. The pastor was really important. They had struggled between which of the 2 of them was most important because the pastor has a greater potential to give referrals, they thought. So, and Mary wasn't even one they considered because she's already at 97% occupancy. So that's kind of where we went with that one. So the takeaway from this for everyone is just the thought process of thinking through why you're going to call on people. When I was a regional manager, I would get frustrated when my salespeople would go back to the same people over and over and over again. And I'm like, why aren't you reaching out? Go to some different, because it's easy to go to people you know. It's easy to go to the same discharge planner. But they're A's. If they're already giving you business, then yes, you want to go see them. But who are your B's? Who are your C's? So that's the reason for this breakout. So good job. I thought you all did well. So we can go on now, Cynthia, to the next. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the sales call. We can go on to the next one. We talked about, so a while ago, the Gallup organization did a study that included 2,500 C-suite people. So this means they were either CFOs, COOs, CEOs of corporations. They were in on it. The CEOs knew about this study that was being done. The salespeople did not. So, and they interviewed them and they taped them and they came back. And one of the studies they came out with, one of the statistics was that 72% of all the CEOs were annoyed by unsolicited small talk. That's a really important piece of information because we have a tendency to spend way too much time in that small talk area. So we're gonna go forward a little bit and look at how not to do that. So let me see what's next. I'm gonna skip over the communication slide for a minute and go to the next one. So here's what I'm gonna recommend and ask for you to think about. The first 20 words that you say when you walk in on a sales call should be by choice, not by chance. Because if you go in and you don't know what you're gonna say, you're gonna be kind of floundering around with the and the uhs and the kind of like, and what that does is cause you to lose your confidence right off the bat. So, and they know it. If you know it, they know it. But if you've studied your first 20 words before you get in there, it's going to roll right off your tongue. And when I was a regional manager, when we would go out on sales calls, the admissions directors hated this, just so you know, or the marketing directors. I would make them say the first 20 words over and over and over again on the way to the sales call. So sometimes they would say it 20 times. But let me tell you, when they walked in on that call, it was so natural. It just flows. And, you know, I'm going to do this, Jody, so you don't have to unless you're ready.
Oh, go ahead. You can do it.
No, you're ready. I'm
I
going to do
think
this.
she's ready. She's ready.
I had to think. Okay.
All right, so let me walk through that. There's 4 parts of it. First is the nicety. You want to make sure you're saying something lovely about either the receptionist was nice or the office is lovely or the weather's crappy and I hope you're feeling better, whatever that is. But it should be minuscule, very brief. Then you're going to tell them why you're there. And then you're going to say, this is what I've done in my life. This is why you should listen to me. And then you transition to questioning. So it's just a simple process that moves you very quickly from the nice part of the call to the business at hand. So go ahead, Jody.
Hi, Pastor Brian. I'm so glad that we were able to finally get together and meet in person. When I spoke to you on the phone, you indicated that you were new to the area, not only new to the area, but new to the church. And I just want to let you know that I've been living in this community for 20 years. I've been a member of your church for the last 10, and I actually know a lot of the congregants in your church. But before we go on to that, do you mind if I ask you a couple of questions and maybe take a few notes?
That's all there is to it, everyone. Good job, Jody. It's not exactly 20 words. That's just a kind of a saying that we use. The first 20 words should be by choice. What you want to make sure you're doing is you're introducing yourself to why you're there. You know, the reason I'm here today, doctor, is I thought we could talk a little bit about, and it's always about them. So we're talking about some change that's happened in their office or, you know, something that's happened in the hospital. If it's a family member, it may be, it's very nice for you to stop in, Mrs. Smith. I'm glad you were able to come today. You know, maybe you say something about the weather on the way back to your office, or, you know, I know you told me yesterday that your cat was having surgery and I thought I'd ask how she's doing. That's the nicety part. The reason I wanted you to stop in today, there's your why are you there, is I wanted to talk a little bit more about your father. Now you're going to talk about why they should listen to you. I've been an admissions director here for 6 years. I've worked with a lot of daughters who are helping their dad with this. So I wondered if I could ask you a few questions. Maybe I'll take a few notes to make sure I get it right. That's it. It is a very simple, very lovely, very easy way to get to where you want to go, which is always questioning, right? Okay, next slide. Now we would spend a great deal more time on that if we were actually doing a sales training. We're just bringing this to you. So the true secret to sales success is being in front of the right customer at the right time with the right message. Bill Brooks started the Brooks Group, which is an international sales training group, and he was my mentor. He wrote 14 books. He also created Impact Selling System. So this is one of his statements that I go by a lot, is that you have to be in front of the right customer. And when you're there, you need to know what the right message is. So really it needs to give some thought before you head out on your sales calls. All right, we're going to go on. I can't remember. And that one we talked about, except I do want to okay, you went somewhere else. Okay. This is an exercise I want you to think about doing at home. We don't have the time for us to do it on this call, but I want you to think about create a customer profile for one customer. Just give some thought to someone that you'd really, really love to get some business from. And in that customer profile, you're going to put down everything you know about that customer. And then you're going to complete a plan. The plan is, what do I want to know? What's the goal of my sales call? Do I want, and remember, it's not sell them the product. It's moving them forward in the sales process. So 2 questions, write down 2 questions you're going to ask, and then use this when you go on your sales call. This is a good way to sort of just start practicing this a little bit. And then you're going to use the first 20 words. These would be my words, but you use your words. Hello, Mr. Smith. It was very nice of you to see me today. How was your trip that you and your wife took that we talked about the last time? Something like that. The reason I wanted to stop in today was I wanted to follow up on what we talked about the community involvement that you thought was important for the hospital. I've been involved with healthcare for over 20 years, and I've been on a lot of local committees. So I was wondering if we could talk a little bit about that. And do you mind if I ask you a few questions about what you're looking for? And I want to make sure I get it right. So could I write a few things down? That's it. You're into questioning. You've gone through the nice part. You're already right there. And within 3 minutes, you're ready to question. That's kind of where you want to go, because the sales call, believe me, is about the questioning. So why are listening and questioning so important to the success in sales? It's one of the areas that in all the years that I've been doing coaching and managing of salespeople, it's the one area that we have a problem with. We want to go in and talk, and we really need to go in and listen, because you can't ask the right questions if you're not listening to what your client is saying. So while they're talking, you're already thinking about what you want to say next, what you want to sell next, what you want to do next. Instead of really slow, and Morgan, and we kind of did this on a training yesterday, and Morgan kept coaching the people in his session to slow down. We're always in this big train that's going through, and we're interrupting the client, and we're talking, and we're not calmly listen to what they're saying, because questioning and listening is extremely important. So we're going to go on to the next slide, which is the listening and questioning exercise. And Jody is going to be your instructor. You will all be listeners, really good listeners. You must have a piece of paper and a pen or pencil. I'm going to make sure everybody has that. I'm waiting for you to get that before we start. Jody will be giving you directions to draw what she is looking at. If you have a question, you can raise your hand. We can see you. Make sure if your camera's on, we can see you. If not, just say, I have a question. And you can ask her a question about what she's telling you. The instructor has to be crystal clear for the listener to draw the design. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to draw this. Does anyone have any questions before we begin? All right, Jody, it's all yours.
Okay, first I'm going to have you hold your paper in the portrait position. And I want you to think of dividing the paper into 4 squares. So you'll have 4 quadrants: top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right. In the first square, in the upper left-hand part of the page, I want you to draw a rectangle, which is approximately 2 inches wide by 3 inches high.
Two inches wide.
Right, by 3 inches high in the top left quadrant of the page. On top of the rectangle, I want you to draw a circle that sits on the top of the rectangle, and it's about the size of a dime. The circle is located in the middle, the top middle. So it sits on it, and it's in the middle, okay? On the second quadrant, the right top quadrant, I want you to draw a 6-pointed star. It's also known as the Star of David.
Oh, I don't know how to draw one of those.
That's all right, just make it 6 points. In the bottom left quadrant, I want you to draw about, let's say about maybe 4 inches from the rectangle that you drew. I want you to draw, you've seen them in cartoons, like a thinking cloud.
And where to put that again, the thinking cloud?
That's in the bottom left quadrant of the page. And it's a thinking cloud. And underneath the thinking cloud, I want you to write the word, like you're thinking, HMMM. Now, in between the first quadrant, the rectangle, and the thinking cloud, right in the middle, I want you to do a multiplication sign. Okay, now to the bottom right quadrant, I want you to draw a clown's hat. So it's a cone, or think of it as a birthday hat, one that's shaped like a cone with a base.
Does it have a brim?
It does have a brim. Yes, it does. And on top of the party hat, the birthday hat, right at the point, I want you to draw a circle this about the size of a dime. Does anybody have any questions? Ronnie, I can't see I can't see everybody. So if you see anyone with their hand up, let me know.
There's no chats.
All right.
And I don't see
Everybody's
any.
mics are off. Nope, I don't see anybody with questions.
So do we want them to turn it around? And do I show them mine?
I would like you to turn yours around and show it to them.
Yeah, but that was professionally made. That's not fair.
No, but did you get it close? How good was the directions? And how well did you listen? Can we see everybody's?
Well, we can see the ones that are video chatting.
Let's
Okay,
see.
so there's Cindy's, and I see Amy's, and I see Sheila's. Sheila had a trouble with the star like I did. I think she did a better job than I did.
Okay.
Pretty good.
I think we have most folks did it good.
All right. Good job.
Excellent.
Good job.
Good job.
Good job, everybody. And good job, Jody.
Thank you.
Okay, so here's my, I don't want to ask a lot of questions because a lot of you have your mics turned off, but I want you to think about how difficult that was to listen to what she was saying carefully and be able to place exactly what she was trying to tell you in the exact location. So when you think about the two points of this are, yeah, it's really important for the listener, but it's also really important for the person giving the direction. Because if she hadn't been very clear, you wouldn't have been able to follow it. So when you're on your sales calls, you want to not only be listening, but really think about when you're speaking. Are you clear? Are you giving very clear answers? You want to ask questions that are crystal clear, that are not difficult for your client to answer. Don't ask questions that are going to throw them off and they have to think about it, because then they don't feel like they know what they're doing. So the listening and exercising or questioning is extremely important to your success as a salesperson. So let's look at some, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So coming from a military brats and a military wife's background, one of the conundrums we've always had, a military conundrum, is strip from the waist, which is what they hear when they go in for their PT test. So which way does that mean?
Yeah.
You strip up or you strip down?
Yeah. Yeah. It should be stripped down from the waist, right?
Or, yeah, or something, yes.
Yeah, one way or the other.
Yeah.
Right. And we do that, you know, when you're doing a manager role and you're on a sales call with someone, that's all you're doing is listening. And it's really interesting when you're listening to how confusing sometimes we are when we ask questions or we try to tell the client something. You really have to give some thought to what it is you're trying to get across to your client.
Yeah.
Okay, good job, guys. Let's go on to questioning. Okay, so let me see, where am I? I went ahead one. All right, so Number one, try to prepare your questions ahead. I mean, I usually tell people to at least have 10 questions before you go out on sales calls. You'll never use them all, or probably won't ever, but at least you have them. There's nothing worse than being in the middle of a sales call and you don't know what else to say. So you want to make sure you've got some good questions. I used to keep a list of questions like on the inside of my folder that you would take with you to take notes. And those questions were right here. So I can use those questions anytime that I want to use to ask different things. Make sure you're asking open-ended questions. Who, what, where, when, why, and how. Don't ask closed questions. When you ask a closed question, you get yes, no, or a one-word answer. So you want to make sure you're asking questions that get people to talk. So tell me is a great one. Tell me a little bit about your father. How is this situation impacting your family? Where do you see this going, doctor? Why do you think this is a problem? So you're not asking questions that say exactly, which of these would you like? Do you tell me a little bit more about your food preferences? Or does your father like to eat vegetables? You're going to get a yes or a no to those questions. And we do have a tendency to use yes or no questions more often than open-ended. Ask questions that help you identify problems to be solved. So when you're in sales, you want to make sure the questions you're asking are taking you to a problem you can solve. You don't want to ask questions about something you can't solve. So again, preparation. Prepare you know your client, you know the customer, you know who's coming in on a tour. Start putting questions together that are pertinent for that customer. Be really careful asking leading questions. A leading question is, you do want your mother to be happy, don't you? Be very careful. They can be extremely offensive when you ask those questions. Okay, next slide. So while questioning is an underutilized skill, connecting the dots is even more challenging. So once you have asked the questions and you've got, like, let's say you ask questions and you have 3 needs. You came up with 3 things that this customer wants. You have to be able to know what you have back at your community that helps to solve those problems. Successful salespeople know that to be successful, you have to be able to pull out of the back of your head things that are meaningful and relevant for that customer. The only way you know how to do that is through excellent product knowledge. You need to know everything about your building. So be the expert, like we talked about earlier, so that when the person says, the one thing I'm most concerned about is, I heard the other day that your center's below staffing. You have no staff in your building. Do you know the answer to that? Do you know what the state requirement is? Do you know how your center staffs? Do you know how much agency you're using? Do you know all those things? That's why I think you need a seat at the table. So you're involved in all those discussions so you can use it when you're selling to people. Okay, go next slide. Okay, so now you've asked the questions, you've uncovered some needs, and now you have to, what we call, summarize. So you're going to say back to the customer what you just heard. So tell the prospect what they just finished telling you. Based on what I heard you say, Mrs. Jones, you're looking for a community that has a lot of socialization. You really like to be communicated with, and you would like to make sure that your father has a private room. Whatever those 3 things are, or 2 things, you repeat them back. Now, why do you repeat them back? Number 1 is to clarify, because I can't tell you how many times I've done this and the customer has said, well, that's not exactly what I want. Oh, okay. Then you go back to questioning. Let's clarify that. Please tell me a little bit more about what you meant when you said this, because that's what I thought I heard. And then you go back and say, okay, well, based on this new way then, what I think you're looking for, Dr. Jones, is a place for your patients to go where they are content and happy, well cared for, and your orders are being followed. Is that right? So that's kind of what you're looking for when you repeat back what you just heard. So how does that sound to everybody? Sound like something you can do?
Absolutely.
Okay. We're going to get where we are here. Okay, so if you go to the next slide, I think you have the example slide. Yeah, okay. So I want you to really think about these three, because this is an example. These are examples of when someone has asked great questions. So they moved through the first 20 words, they moved through the nicety, they asked if they could ask a few questions, take a few notes. When they started asking the questions, they got some needs. Now they're going to say those needs back. So based on what I heard you say, you're looking for a service that will enable your mother to be comfortable, that has a warm and caring staff, and offers you someone you can talk to directly about your mom's condition and care. Is that correct? Now, you need to be taking notes. So while you're listening, you're taking a few notes and you're writing down the needs you're hearing briefly, but you're writing them down so you can then refer back and say, am I right? This is what's really important to you. Now, sometimes you're only going to get one need, as in the second case. Based on what I heard you say, you need more Medicare education for your staff. Is that correct? So you may get a client that's adamant about one thing, and you're going to do the same thing. And the third example is, based on what I heard you say, you're looking for a partner, a place that can accept patients immediately, where you won't get patient and family complaints, and one that follows your orders. Is that right, doctor? So now the next, I don't know if the next slide says this or not. Let's see. Before you do the recommendation, I would add one thing. And I would say, if you could choose one of these items, one of these three things, which one is the most important to you? That's what you make your recommendation on. So let's say the doctor says, the most important thing to me is they follow my orders. I can't tell you how many times I go into buildings and they're not following my orders. Then you make a recommendation based on what you know about your prospect's needs. Now you get to talk about your building. So you're going to say, so the most important thing to this doctor is that his needs, that his orders are followed. That's what's most important to him. So now I can recommend our building, because I know in our building, our director of nursing is crystal clear with the staff. Every doctor's orders get followed. And maybe there's a system in place that he or she makes sure that doctor's orders are being followed. But again, I'm back to product knowledge. You got to know that. You got to know that. You can't say to the doctor, well, I'm not sure, but well, you can, but I'm not sure about that, doctor. Let me go back and check. You ought to know that. Like he ought to know how to take care of people. You ought to know about your product. Those are that's your responsibility as a salesperson. So you're going to make it a recommendation now. Okay. So now we're going to go to the last part of it, which is closing. So what does always be closing really mean? So let's go to the next slide. So no doesn't mean no, it means not right now. That's Bill Porter. He was the door-to-door salesman. If you ever got to see that movie with William Macy, he was the door-to-door salesman. He never took no for an answer. That's how he was successful. So if you do all these steps and you work through and you question appropriately and you meet the needs based on what your client's telling you they need, and you make a recommendation based on that, and you listen carefully and you repeat it back and they agree, you're not going to have any obstacles. You've already removed all the obstacles. If questioning is thorough, your obstacles will be very rare. A salesperson has the responsibility to always be in charge of the next step. So make sure once you've made the recommendation that you say to them, that whatever the next step is going to be. So you might want to say, Mrs. Jones, let me give you a call on Tuesday and see what your decision is if they're not ready to buy today. Doctor, I'm going to make an appointment with your nurse scheduler so that I can bring back next week the system that you were talking about. Never, ever end a sales call saying, I'll get back with you someday, or call me if you need me. You're a salesperson. You need to be in charge of the next step. Always ask for the business now. You've earned it. You've earned the right to set the next step. Okay. All right. Next slide should be the recap quiz. We're doing good. All right. So now you need to turn your mics off to answer this. Or turn them on, I mean. You all got them off. Somebody tell me what your number one responsibility is.
Relationship building.
Yeah, generate revenue, fill the building, get the best clients, the quality inquiries, whatever it is you're selling, your job is to sell it. So is there anybody on the call that's not in healthcare? No, everybody's in healthcare. Okay, well then you all know me. All right, people buy why you sell, not
what
you sell, right? You want to be perceived by your customer as a
expert.
Yes, or a strategic resource.
Oh,
even better.
Resource. Okay.
No. Why are the first 20 words so important?
First impressions matter.
First impressions matter, and you will be so confident that you'll make such a great first impression because you're not going to be stumbling over your first words, and it's going to make your sales call much easier. Why do we repeat back to the customer what their concerns are?
To make sure we understand that what they said is what they meant.
Absolutely. Perfect. Wouldn't change a word. Perfect. Why do we wait to start to sell?
We don't want to be just a salesperson.
Yeah. And that's how you will be viewed. If you walk in there and you just start blabbing about selling your product, you're spraying and praying. You're going to show up and throw up. That's how they think about you. So you want to wait until you've really given your client time and built rapport and trust with them. Mm-hmm. At the end of the sales call, we should always do what?
Summarize.
Okay, go further to the end.
Next step.
Yes, you should always not just have one, be in charge of it. Mm-hmm. It's you that follows up, not them. Okay, next slide, Cynthia. Okay, so we've gone over all of these things in our agenda. Next slide. We actually touched briefly, I will admit, on everything. This is our team. So we have other members of our team now. The team changes. You can see Jody doing some coaching with an external salesperson here with an internal admissions person. We do speaking, and we do, when we could get people together, we were doing training like our folks there on the desk. All right, next slide. And these are some of our clients. They're all over the country. We're in 11 states right now and growing. And next slide. And so I think this is in your workbook. These are all the different programs that we do. So if you're interested in any of them, you can call or email Morgan or Jody or me, or go to our website. They're all on there as well. And I think the next slide is a thank you. We're done. This is the thank you. And I really, really appreciated everything, all of you being online. I know we had some technical difficulties, but we made it through. So thank you all very much. I'll talk to you. You might want to try to join us for the marketing one that I think we're doing on November 13th. We're going to talk just about marketing on that call. Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you so much. This is Cynthia.Gartman with Seniors Blue Book with Veronica Fogelman of Ledgerock Consultancy. Thank you so much for joining us today. Have a great day, everybody.